That's a lot of kind of operational stuff to throw at you. It may be easy, just kind of work through a couple of examples to show you how the system works. So let's start off by saying you want to find out how much the construction industry, folks working in construction in Nash County, what are their earnings looking like? So we can do a couple of ways. You can search any way you want to. You can search for geography first. You can search for theme first. I'm going to search for construction. No, I was actually going to search for. Now you'll notice here, it says text search. If I take that away, then things will go back. You haven't actually searched anything if you just have a text search in. So I'll show you here. Let's do income. Okay, so now we've gone from 108 data sets to 23 data sets, and we have the word income here, but we don't actually have anything selected. We've just done a text search. So we can scroll down these data sets and see what seems most applicable to our needs. So we've got things from the American Community Survey. We've got state comparisons dealing with the COVID pandemic. I happen to know that the earnings by industry comes from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, and they have a personal income table that's reported every year. Now, historically, that was by the old Standard Industrial Classification Code, but now it's organized by the North American Industry Classification System. So this is the most current data from BEA. So that sounds like what I want. So I will click that. Now we're actually in the data set. So this data set has over 262,000 records. And we have data for, we see all the counties here. We can select, if I just want to see North Carolina, I can select the state of North Carolina. If I just want to focus on the counties, I can say I only want to look at this type of geography, or I can select individual names of the geography. The search filter here, since I'm within the data set, I have much more powerful searching. I'm searching all the names of the geographies as well as all the variable items and year. You'll also notice that you have the ability to sort items at the top of the table, and you've got your functionality information at the top of the table as well. The information tab is a general descriptive. It's what you saw when you were looking at all the data sets from the very beginning, but it does give you a link to the reporting agency. So if you're seeing information here that's great and you want to see what more information that agency has available, follow the link to the reporting agency. And since I am logged in as a registered user, I have the ability to click the bell and become, and I'll get email notifications whenever this data set is updated. So it's a nice way for you to keep up with the data. The table is always the tabular display of the data. It's what we're looking at right now. We're going to go in just a second and do some filtering of this data to get exactly to what we want. Analyzing allows us to create the charts. We're going to do that as well. You also notice the export feature. We're going to come back to that in just a second. So what I mentioned is we wanted to look at the construction information. So I'll type in construction. Now we're down to 6,060 records. So we've narrowed things down. If I scroll down a little bit, construction has narrowed down the number of variables. So there are 3 variables that have to do with construction. And I can see that those are available from 2001 when the NAICS system was implemented through 2020. So I'm just going to go with total construction. Now, when I click that, you'll see that it shows up here. I've selected a variable and I have the text search. So the text search pulled everything that had construction in it. Construction is a specific variable. So those are 2 different items. I can get rid of the text search, but I'm keeping the variable that I've selected. So that's what, just to understand that when you're putting in a text search, you could be grabbing more than you really need. I also know that I'm interested in just Nash County. So I'll type in Nash, and it's sure enough, there's Nash County. But again, I haven't actually selected it until I grab it here. And now I can do away with the text search. So now I've got 20 records. And I can click on year and sort from lowest to highest or from highest to lowest. So in the latest year, in 2020, there was $200,873 for construction worker earnings in Nash County. So now I've got, if that's the data that I really want, I can do a couple of things. At the bottom of the table, you'll see share. So if you're working on a project with a team and you want to share the data, you can grab this data just by clicking here, and that's copied that URL. And then if you send that to your teammates in an email and they put it in, they will get the full table that you just looked at. They don't get any of the navigation. They're not actually in LINC with the navigation permissions, but they do get all the data, and the data maintains that same functionality. So they can sort it by year, they can sort it by value if they'd like to. So that's just a quick sharing of the data. It's kind of like a copy and paste. If you're working on your own website and this data would be something that you want to embed within that, you can do the same thing. Click the embed or the widget tool. LINC gives you an iframe with the code. You can click that, drop it into your report, and that data will stay there in the same sort of functionality you just saw with that copy and paste. They won't get the full navigation, but they will get the data table, and it will be dynamic. So if it turns out that, well, I'm actually interested in the Rocky Mount area, so that's Edgecombe and Nash, maybe I want to add more data to that. So we could certainly add another county. We'll add Edgecombe. So now we've got 40 records. We're getting all the construction for those years in Edgecombe and Nash. That's exactly what I want. So let's come over to export. And now we've got the option. We can export in multiple ways. You also have the option of, I just want the records that I was hunting for, those 40 records. But if you love the whole data set, you can grab the whole thing, all 262,000 records at one time. If you're working with APIs, you do have the ability to create an API call. By clicking on that link now, it actually creates the full call to get the specific data we have just constructed. So if you're doing a lot of API work, that may be a great solution for your needs. And that's a new feature of the new version of LINC. So from the export session, you can use JSON, you can use Excel or CSV file to pull the specific items that you want to. Now I mentioned this cross tabulation feature here earlier. So what does that mean? So if we click on it, it shows that, well, I've got the data for Edgecombe and Nash counties, but what if I actually wanted not just that? That's a very kind of tight focus. What if I wanted all the BEA data for those counties? I can take construction off. And now what I've done is I've gotten all the data that's reported by the Bureau of Economic Analysis for personal income for all categories for every year that this has been reported. So if you're doing a lot of analysis or maybe you're doing your own visualization, you want to export this data into Tableau or Power BI or another analytical package. Really what you want is just to grab a big chunk of specific data. The cross table allows you to do that. If I didn't pick any county, it would give me the whole data set, sort of like doing the bulk export. So this is a great way to grab. You're able to narrow down a huge data set to be kind of specific to the geographies or the data items that you're looking for, and then get all of it for all years. So this is a change from the old version of LINC where you were limited to doing just 25 years at a time. You can do more than that here. You can do all geographies at a time. So it's a much more robust data set than we had in the past. So that is what a cross table is. That allows you to get all this information. If you don't have anything at all and you try to do a cross table, it will prompt you to pick an area name or variable. So if I just pick accommodation, one variable, it's going to give it to me for all geographies and for all years. That's what a cross table does. Now you will notice that there are some gaps in the data tables here. Those gaps are not the same as zeros. That is where a reporting agency has suppressed data. So instead of giving us a data point here, they've given us a code that may say the number of earnings for accommodation was somewhere between $50 and $100. So when they give us a numeric suppression code, that code is just pulled out. It's not the same as a zero. It is a suppression code. Okay, let's go back to the data catalog. This time we're going to do a quick search to look at education data. And on this one, what we're going to do is maybe we've seen an article or we're doing a study and we want to take a look at the impact of private education. Is there a correlation between folks who didn't go to public schools, public school enrollment, and maybe private college enrollment? An example so we can demo the functionality of LINC. So I'm going to do a quick search here for education. Now I mentioned, so now we've gone down from 108 data sets to 9. So we'll scroll down to see what we're looking for. And I want to point out this data set in particular. So if you're looking at the data set, like we just saw the accommodations data, we just saw the construction data, you want to know exactly what does that mean? What is the data? What is the agency who reports that data really serving? That's what the data dictionary is for. So clicking on the LINC data dictionary, you will get a list of all the variables that are within LINC, the reporting agency, and the definition for that variable. And some of these definitions can be pretty big. You may not see them all here. If you hover over them, you'll see the full data definition, but you can also export these. So you can create a query, select the variables that you're interested in, and then export those, and you'll get the full data definition. You can also create an API call to grab that data as well. So the data dictionary is a data set within LINC, and it defines the data that's there. So just don't forget that that's there. It's really helpful if you're looking at all this data and you want to figure out what it means. But specifically, we're going to go into the education data set. So clicking on that, 164,000 records in this data set. And we'll notice here that we have a lot of area types to pick from now. We have the county. Municipal part means there are some municipalities that cross a county line. So you can look at that part of a municipality that's in one county. So if we're looking at High Point, that's in about 4 or 5 different counties, you can look at the different segments of High Point that are in Davidson County, in Forsyth County. That's a municipal part. A municipality is the total for that municipality, and these are only incorporated places. If you're looking at census data and you see CDP, that stands for Census Designated Place, that's not an incorporated municipality, and they won't show up here unless they incorporate. State of North Carolina is just that. Township is a county subdivision. That's a census geography, but it does carry on an older tradition of townships in North Carolina. And census tracts are just out there, the census tract geography from the decennial census. So for this exercise, we'll just look at the state of North Carolina. And we could have picked North Carolina from the area name list. When I clicked on it, the area type has now been selected. So that's our active filter. And now we're down to 963 data items. So as I look over here, I see non-public school enrollment and I see private college enrollment. And I think that's the data that I'm looking for. But to narrow things down, since there are 963 items, I'll put in the word enrollment, since both the non-public and private college had that name in it. So now we're down to 354 records. And if we look down here, we will see what our query has limited us to these variable selections. So your variable option list will change based on the criteria that you have up here. So I am interested in non-public and I am interested in private college. So now we're down to 109 records. Again, we can sort these right here if we'd like to, but really what I'm interested in is telling a graphical story of this analysis. So I'll click on the Analyze button, and it kicks us into creating a dynamic chart. Now, you may have noticed that when we first clicked on those items over here, it said that there were 58 years worth of data for non-public school for North Carolina and 51 for private college enrollment. Why aren't we seeing that data here? Well, the system defaults to showing us 50 max points here, but you have the ability to change that. So if we move it up to 200, now we see all the data that was reported. It defaults to showing us a column chart, but we have the option of other types of charts that you can go with whatever works best for you. The old area spline chart. If you like that visibility, then go ahead and use it. As you move along the years, you notice the data points are changing. So it's giving you a visual look, but it's also giving you the data within the functionality. I think what I want to do here is to create a column chart. And the default is not to stack it, but let's go ahead and do it normally and it stacks it. I have the same functionality here of being able to copy this chart and then send it to colleagues. So again, they don't get the functionality within LINC, but they do get the data points. Now, as a registered user, one of the benefits you have here is you get the edit in advanced mode. That doesn't show up if you're not a registered user. So what that allows you to do, you have more functionality on your chart. You also have the ability to add data from other data sets. So if you wanted to bring in information about income or information about the number of hogs produced in North Carolina, you can grab other data points from any other data set and add that to this chart, and it will map it as it will chart it as well. So all that functionality is there. It's only there if you're a registered user. You also have the ability to come in and change the color scales if you want a different theme. But one of the biggest selling points to being a registered user is this thing. You can come in, we'll call it Bob's Wicked Chat. You can save your work. So clicking this will save the map with all the queries and everything that you've put together. It will be saved under your username. So it's there until you decide to throw it away. So if you put a lot of time and research into working on a chart and you want to hang on to it, that's a great way of doing it. The other thing to remember is this is tied to a data set. So as that data set gets updated, the new data will be populated in the data set. It'll also be populated on the chart that you've created. So if you're using this for a quarterly report and you've got maybe the monthly labor force information that gets reported, as soon as it's in LINC, it'll be populated on this chart and you drop it right into your report and you're done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel each time the data is released. So big selling point to being a registered user. So that's a quick example of dynamic charting. I'm going to do one more quick exercise on showing you mapping, and then I'm going to take a break and let Dr. Klein talk about his data. So the 2020 census just came out. They just released the redistricting data last fall. And I know that's what all of you are taking a look at right now, trying to do your own analysis. Did the Census Bureau really do a good job with the data? So let's take a look at using some of that data to make a quick map. So I'm going to do a search for 2020 census. So now we've moved from 100 plus data sets to 14. And we see population estimates. I'm going to let Dr. Klein talk about that. Specifically, what I'm interested in is looking at this redistricting data. So we have redistricting data available for block groups. The redistricting data here is for the state, the counties, and municipalities. So that's what I want to take a look at. And what I'd really like to do is I'm interested in, let's say, the limits to the data that were released in redistricting is the data was released for the total population, for the voting age population, 18 and over, and for the total population. And then there's some group quarters and housing unit breakdowns. The bulk of there will be another release of census data providing much more information on age, race, that sort of information. Is going to be a part of the detailed and housing characteristics file that we expect to see late this summer. We don't have a firm release date on it, but there will be more detail from the 2020 census. Right now, this is all we have. So let's do a map showing the distribution of the tribal population, the American Indian and Alaska Native alone population in North Carolina. So and let's just do, we'll do a county chart just for quick example. So we've got 100 records, 100 counties. Now we can go into the map area. So if we hover over each county and click on it right now, it will give us, so in Randolph County, 1,150 persons identified as being American Indian or Alaska Native as their only racial identity. Now, this is really, as a non-registered user, you can grab this and share it just like we did in the other items, but you do not get the edit in the advanced mode. You only get that as a registered user. What that allows us to do with maps is we get different versions of it. We're able to go in and edit, and we can do different versions of mapping. So we'll do a choropleth. So you'll notice that now the shading changes. We have the ability to make the colors more opaque if you don't want folks seeing the roads and highways behind you. We can change our color theme if we decide that we want to have a little more variation. And here again, the big selling feature is you can put a name to your chart. You can share this as it is, and you'll get the same options that you saw before. You have a widget input so that you could drop it into your own web page, or you could drop it into a report. But you can also give your file a name, and as soon as you give it a name, get the option to save that map. And just like with the chart, that's going to be saved to your own work area under your name. It will stay there. If you have multiple variables, we have the same functionality here that we did with the chart. If I choose to, let's minimize this. If I choose, I can go in and add more data sets. So if I wanted to bring in some income, if I wanted to bring in other data, you can bring in as many data points as you want to. You're usually only able to map one data item at a time, but you can do multiple maps off a joined data set that you've worked on, and have that saved in your workspace. If you have a large data set, and this is decennial census, so this is going to be updated once every 10 years. But if you have something that's updated monthly or quarterly, when the new data comes into that data set, you'll be able just to say, I want to show the latest data, and your map is updated and you're done. Again, if you have a GIS system, if you're strong in those skills, your GIS system is going to give you a lot more functionality. But this is a great way to do quick mapping within the system, and it depends really on your needs. The functionality that I've showed you for the charting and the mapping, if you have other analytical tools that you're much more comfortable with and you'd like to use those, please feel free to go ahead and use them. You're absolutely able to export an entire data set, or you can do the cross table that we talked about to extract a big chunk of data and work in whatever program you're most comfortable with. LINC is just meant to be a quick access tool to get you to, we see it as being your best first place to go for data about North Carolina. It's not all the data that North Carolina produces. In fact, we have meetings coming up this week that the new system allows us to automate importing data into LINC. So we hope to have much more data coming in soon. Unfortunately, the system became live right during COVID, so we haven't had a chance to do the outreach in a way that we'd like to, but keep an eye on LINC. It's a growing resource. We hope that it'll be helpful for you.